Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over some crucial mistakes that console Fortnite players specifically are making. This video was partially inspired by me watching a lot of Celebration Cup streams during the event, and then those sort of highlight videos that players upload after it was over. All that footage not only showed me some of the more advanced things that the top console players do that makes them so successful, but it also showed me a lot of mistakes that certain lesser skilled players make that I believe are holding them back from being much better. And those mistakes are more so what we're going to be focusing on in this. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so the first mistake is something that I believe is an absolutely rampant problem in the console Fortnite community, and I'm about 99% confident I know the reason why. The problem is that so many console players play on a sensitivity that's simply too high for them to reliably control. And you want to know the main reason for this epidemic? It's due to the fact that a ton of console players look to their favorite controller player when picking a sensitivity. And here's the thing, in theory, that's actually a very smart idea. In the past, when I played games like COD, Overwatch, Halo, etc., I would always do pretty much the same exact thing. I'd maybe go to a Scump or Formal stream, type !sense, copy everything they had, and that usually worked out perfectly well for me. Trying to emulate really successful people in anything you're playing isn't just a good strategy for video games, it's also a pretty solid mindset for almost anything in life. However, the bad news when it comes to Fortnite is that there's one specific difference about it compared to almost all the other popular controller shooter games out there. And that's the fact that even though something like 95% of controller players play on either PS4 or Xbox, the vast majority of the pro-level controller players play on PC. If I were to ask you out of the blue to list off the best controller Fortnite players, how long would you have to keep going until you named a player that mainly played on console? It'd probably take a while, and if you don't really pay attention to the competitive console scene, which is relatively new at this point, you may finish your entire list without even naming one PS4 or Xbox player. The reason this is so problematic is because the major FPS difference between PC and console has a huge effect on sensitivity. Less FPS means choppier gameplay, which makes higher sensitivity values significantly harder to control, especially with aiming. In one of my most recent videos, I basically showcased a bunch of rage tweets from controller on PC players who went back to console for a recent tournament. And even though they complained about a variety of different things, one of the most common complaints was something along the lines of, even though I'm using the same sensitivity I always have, I can't control it now that I'm on console. Or why does my sensitivity feel so different? Or why does my aim feel so out of control? The point is, even the best controller players in the world find it really difficult to use their PC sensitivity on console. So knowing that, if you've chosen to copy your sensitivity values from a controller on PC player, there's probably a decent chance your sensitivity is higher than it really should be, and your aim would really benefit from it being lowered a bit. Now, does that mean looking at other players' sensitivity is useless or something you shouldn't do? Absolutely not. It gives you a nice starting point to work with that's probably at least relatively close to the perfect sensitivity for you. However, it's also important that you realize there's a major gameplay difference between controller on PC and controller on console, so if the sensitivity values you copy feel too high, don't think, oh well, I just gotta get used to it, if it works for Aiden or Nick Merckx, it'll work for me. No, that's actually a bad mindset to have. Odds are if it feels too high right off the rip, then it is too high, so lower it. The next mistake I see console players make is trying to play too fast. I guess that's kinda related to using too high of a sensitivity, but at the same time, not really. So what I mean when I use the term playing too fast is basically using too many twitchy and flicky movements while in fights. The most common examples of this include flick-shotting in shotgun fights, trying to make crazy fast flick edits, and attempting super advanced high ground retakes that require flicking to place certain pieces. First off, no matter which platform or input device you play Fortnite on, these super fast and precise movements that some players are able to make with their crosshair are really difficult to do, even for the best players in the world. Then, when you look at only controller players, the list of people that revolve their game around super twitchy movement is almost non-existent. However, that doesn't stop a lot of console players from trying to emulate that playstyle in-game. I don't think it's a coincidence that pretty much all the highest earning console players I've watched don't really seem like mechanical gods. You don't really ever see them flick shot, flick edit, or flick build. Their movement all seems very under control and almost slow if we're being honest. However, based on the fact that those players win all the console tournaments and cash cups, slow and controlled seems to be beating fast and twitchy pretty decisively so far. The next mistake that I see console players frequently making is over-jumping in close-range fights. So if you're someone who jumps a lot in close-range fights, you definitely have the right idea, because making yourself a harder target to hit is incredibly important. However, a technique that I see a lot of console players use is spam jumping, which is probably the most advanced and hardest to execute type of in-fight movement. It makes you the hardest target to hit from your enemy's point of view, but since your elevation is constantly changing, it also makes it significantly harder for you to hit shots even if you jump with a paddle on your controller or play claw. So when you consider the fact that it's already really hard to hit shots on 60 FPS as it is, I wouldn't recommend such an advanced movement technique that makes it considerably harder. When I play on console, I mostly just stick to strafing, and I would recommend the same for you guys as well. As long as you strafe unpredictably, you're still going to be pretty hard to hit, and compared to spam jumping, I think you'll find it a lot easier to hit shotgun shots, especially when you're moving. Our next mistake that a lot of console players make is not taking advantage of their SMG enough. One reason why I think Chapter 2 Season 2 is so good for controller and console players specifically is the current state of SMGs versus the current state of shotguns. Plain and simple, there are a bunch of different really good SMGs in the game right now, while the shotguns on the other hand are relatively weak. That is, at least until you get to purple and gold rarity. I think I've already made it pretty clear in this video that aiming is one of the biggest struggles of playing on console FPS, so what's a great way to compensate for that? How about spraying with a weapon that has a really fast fire rate and high DPS, which describes pretty much every SMG in the game. Plus, as an added bonus for all you linear players out there, whenever you spray with an SMG, you get an insane amount of aim assist that makes hitting multiple shots in a row a lot easier. Now, does that mean don't use a shotgun at all? Absolutely not. But in previous seasons where shotguns were really strong and SMGs were really weak, a lot of good players would pretty much only use their SMG to break and replace walls, or maybe they'd spray at a player who they knew 100% was one shot. If you're a console player and you're using your SMG like that in Chapter 2 Season 2, I believe you're doing yourself a disservice. The final mistake that I see console players make way too often is not paying enough attention to audio cues in Fortnite. Now, to be fair, game sound in Fortnite is kinda infamous for being a little misleading at times, so I can understand why people may not fully trust it. However, I specifically recall watching even really good console players, and there were times where I would hear an enemy rushing or repositioning in a chaotic fight, but the player actually playing didn't pick up on it, and it usually resulted in them being taken by surprise and getting a lot of damage dealt to them, or even worse, dying. Sure, it's probably a bit easier for me to pick up on those things as I'm sitting in my chair watching a stream compared to the guy actually playing who's probably focusing on 5 different things at once, but audio is one of those things that you just can't disregard. It's too important. And I get it, if you don't have a great headset, it can be even harder to decipher Fortnite's less than ideal in-game sounds, but hopefully it's something that you can get used to over time. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down the comment section below. If you're a console player, what are some mistakes that you personally make on a fairly frequent basis? It can be one of the 5 that I shared in this video, or not, that's fine too. Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.